Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Accelerate to Industry kickoff for the spring semester. I'm Jill Huerta. I'm Executive Director of the Center for Graduate Life, and I'm so glad to be here with you to get a little bit of professional development. Congratulations for taking some time out of your day to do something that's really good for your future and for your skill development. I know it can be hard when you have so much work to do for your classes to say, no, I'm going to make this space for some professional development today. So good job on that. As you probably know, Accelerate to Industry is a program we have out of the Center for Graduate Life that brings in corporate partners to talk about professional development directly with students. So instead of bringing in all kinds of people from the university, we're bringing in people from the Charlotte region who actually hire people, who hire our students in many cases, to interact with you and tell you what they're looking for in the students they hire, and to give you advice on the kind of skills that you should develop to be successful in your career. So I'm very enthusiastic about having Kim Harris with us today. She is one of our own. Besides being an alum in the MS program in health informatics, she's also a current student in our DBA program. But today she's talking with us about professional development from the perspective of her role as a business operations specialist for Optum. And she'll be talking with you about a challenging topic and a topic that we often avoid because we're afraid to do it, and that is having difficult conversations, not just with people who report to you or with colleagues, but even with people above you. There are all kinds of contexts where it's difficult to have tough conversations. So I hope you'll really, really absorb the advice that she's going to give you. Before I hand it over to you, I want to make sure everyone is on board with the Hopin platform and how that works. Right now, you are in the stage, so good for you. You got here. That's the hardest part of Hopin. We'll be here for most of the presentation, but at some point we will go to something that looks like breakout room. We will go to sessions, and on the left of your screen, you can see some buttons, and sessions is going to be one of them. When it's time to do that, I will come back and guide you through. But for now, I'd like to hand it over to Kim. Kim, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Thank you for that great introduction, and thank you all for having me. I'm very glad to present to you all today. I'm very excited. As Jill mentioned, I am alumni and a current student. So I graduated from UNC Charlotte in 2015 with my degree in health informatics. And now I'm currently a doctoral student in the business administration program. So lots of learning, and I'll get more into my background shortly. I do want to acknowledge people. I see the chat, so you may see me divert my attention off to the right, and then when Jill comes back on, I'll probably divert my attention to the other side, because I do see people. I'm reading the chat, and I do expect this to be an interactive session. So I am going to be glancing at the chat, and I want to say good morning to everyone who signed in. I see that there are some doctoral students, some master's students. So very, very great to see. And I also see in the chat, we're being directed to the stage. So if you are in the event part, click on the stage tab, and we will continue our interactions there. Okay, so let's get started, right? So this presentation is called Difficult Conversations, How to Manage Up, Down, and Across the Industry. And the reason that, I'm presenting on this is because in my years of experience, I've had to work with an array of people. So not just my colleagues or my direct managers, but I've also had to interact with people in senior management, both domestically and overseas. I've had to operate with high-level directors, vice presidents, things like that. And it's interesting that, you have to be able to handle yourself no matter what the situation is. So I thought that that would be a good topic to share with you all, because at some point in your career, it's going to come a point where you might want to have a conversation that you find that's a little difficult, and it's okay. And I want you all to know that it's okay. And hopefully you all walk away with some tips and some thinking points, and maybe have some questions for me at the end, because we will have a Q&A session that can help you as you get ready to navigate your careers and enter the workforce, or continue in the workforce if you're already there. So quick check. Can everyone see the slides before we dive into them? Just a yes or no in the chat would be good. And okay, I see a yes. And hopefully we're in full screen, Jill. I think you can still hear me. Yes. Okay, so people can see. Okay, yeah, and that's great. That's better. Okay, so now we're in full screen. Awesome. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so just a disclaimer. I want to be clear that, the information that I'm presenting in this presentation is a representation of my experiences. It's not a reflection of my current employer or any past employers or any past organizations I've been a part of. I'm speaking on behalf of my own personal experiences, so I just want to be clear there. Next slide. All right, so this is the standard thing, right? So you want to know about me, and I'll tell you about me, right? This public information. So I am Kim Harris, and as I mentioned, I am in the doctoral program for business administration here at UNC Charlotte. I've gotten a few degrees, and I started my journey at Troy University in Troy, Alabama, because I am from Troy. Yeah, I see a Go Troy in the chat. Yes, yes. So it's been an interesting journey, but it's landed me here in Charlotte, which I enjoy Charlotte. I love Charlotte. And let's see, industry-wise, so I do have an array of industries. So my background is industrial engineering, and I specialize in process improvement. So I have a lot of experience there, and process improvement follows me throughout whatever job I go into. It follows me throughout my journey. While I was in school for my master's degree, I did do an internship with Carolina's healthcare system, which I think they may be named something differently now. And now I work for Optum, which is the technical side of United Health Group. It says business operations specialist because I've held a variety of roles while I've been at this company. Some where I've been a consultant, some where I've been a colleague, a team member, like a data analyst. I'm currently a business analyst. I've also had to fill in for interim roles where I've filled in for associate directors on more long-term projects. So again, I have an array of experience here, and that's why I'm qualified to speak with you on this topic. And I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, I see some people from Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a great place. I feel like we're on the same journey here, so that's exciting. Next slide. So this is also me too, okay? We often hear people talk about what their accolades are as far as it relates to their academics and the careers they have. But another component to people, and I want to share this with you, is your personal life, your outside activities. And I think that's very important to consider. So no matter what it is that you do, that's something that you want to take into consideration when you're in the job market and you're looking at different positions and you're having conversations with your team. You're a person, it's not all about work, and work-life balance is a thing. Some people will have different perceptions on it. For me, work-life balance is an important component to my life, because as you can see, I do a variety of things. So I roller skate, I swim, I started a voter registration campaign, I hike, I exercise, I did improv at some point. I'm running around, I'm always trying different things. So it's important to know yourself. And that's why I want to share this, right? Because you should take that into consideration as you're having conversations with different companies. Next slide. Okay, so I want to get everybody involved, right? Because again, the title of this is Difficult Conversations. So I want to know, and you put this in the chat, how comfortable are you with having difficult conversations? Are you very comfortable? Are you somewhat comfortable? Are you not comfortable at all? Well, let me see if I can paste some options. I'll paste some options in here to help you out. I think, did it paste? It might not paste. But yeah, just type in, are you someone that's cool with having difficult conversations? Does it unnerve you? Have you never had a difficult conversation? Let's see what's going on. What constitutes difficult? That's a good question. So, that's going to be different based on the person, it just depends. And I think that as we go through this presentation, I may give you some ideas of some topics that you might feel like, yeah, I am uncomfortable speaking about that, or I'm very comfortable speaking about that. Or you might even think, that's not something I considered, but I'm glad that you brought it up because I want to be comfortable having this conversation because it impacts me. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And I'm still reading the comments. So like I said, you'll see my head divert to the side because I'm reading the comments. So this is a quote. 70% of employees are avoiding difficult conversations with their boss, their colleagues, and their direct reports. So this just shows you it's common, right? And it's okay to be uncomfortable. No one wants to be uncomfortable, and that's what makes certain conversations difficult. But just, just showing, it's a common thing. So next slide. All right. So I've told you about myself, and now I want to get into what we're going to discuss today. So there are 3 things that I want us to cover. The first one is understanding our company cultures and your personal sense of value and belief. The next thing is discussing the differences in leadership. And the last thing is to navigate difficult conversations, both ideal and non-ideal. Okay? Next slide. All right, so another activity for you all, company culture. And you've probably heard this term or phrase before, but I really want you to consider that company culture is about you as well. So when you're looking at different businesses or organizations to be a part of, you could and should have an understanding of what's important to you. So a lot of times when you think about like, what are values and beliefs? Ask it to yourself, like what are things that you believe? What are things that you feel strongly about? What are things that you would like to consider? What are things that you prefer? What are things that you're concerned about? What are things that you would need? I'd like you guys to enter into the chat some of those things, and I'll read some of them out, right? So when you think about, okay, I believe, like for instance, I believe that work-life balance is important. So I feel that I should take a job that allows me to have time outside of work during reasonable hours. Or, I'm considering elevating myself in a way that I need a job that can invest in my tuition. I need a job that can invest in paying back student loans. So things like that, that's something that relates to me. But yeah, so I'm reading. Yeah, so I believe in environmental awareness and sustainability, flexible hours. Yeah, so those are good examples, right? So everyone has a sense of value and belief, and that's important to understand because you spend a lot of your time at work. You spend a lot of your time um, you spend a lot of your hours, your working hours. It's usually at least a full-time job is at least 40 hours, right? So I think it's important to understand yourself when you're looking at company cultures. Yep, mental well-being, absolutely. And I think 2020 has taught us all a lot about the importance of mental well-being. Okay, so yeah, keep those coming in. We can go to the next slide. All right. So we talked about, about yourself, right? Or at least you should understand yourself when you're thinking about company culture. Now you're looking at jobs, right? People might reach out to you. You might have these recruiters come to you, talk about their companies. And one of the things that you can easily identify, the first step to easily identifying what a company culture is to look at their values and their mission statement. This is their public facing information that tells about what the company believes in. So when you're looking at different values and mission statements, you're going to see things that pertain to their goals and what their aim is. Maybe their aim for the business or their aim for the community, what their commitments are, what their purpose is, what their focus is. So it's going to look different for each company, but these are some of the things that you should expect to see. Next slide. Okay, so another activity for you all. We talked about your personal beliefs and we talked about what we're going to look for when we look at company culture. And I'll have some examples for you. But just before we get into the examples, what fits your personality? So I think I've seen some of these in the chat already. But, some examples are, I need a flexible work environment. Now, that might mean hours. That might mean telecommuting, working from home. You have to define what flexibility is for you, but that's an example. Culture may be important. Diversity may be important. Equality. If you have a family, or if you're trying to develop a family, if you're trying to expand your family, family may be important to you. Teamwork versus individualism, right? So many of you all are students. Sometimes, in your assignments, there may be things that you prefer to work on by yourself, and there may be things that you prefer to work on in teams. So I think that's an important component to understand about company culture, because some companies are more team oriented, or they may have divisions that are more team oriented. And then some companies may have roles that are more individually oriented. I'll explain about myself, right? So in my current role, I'm an individual contributor, but I work with the team. So that's like a hybrid of those two. So, what do you all think? What's something that fits your personality? What would you want to see in a company culture? Support from leadership. Okay. Yeah, and that's important too. Right? So we all have different thoughts. And, my purpose again is to get you to thinking about, what do I value? What do I believe in? Because this is going to help you decipher which companies are good for you. And it will also help you prepare for the types of conversations that you may have as you go into these companies. Flexibility. Yeah, okay. Investment in people, investment in the community. Great. Okay. So again, feel free to continue entering in your thoughts. Oh, let me check this other tab really quickly. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, so values and mission statements. I said I want to provide an example. I added a few on here, so I'll read some of these out loud just in case it's difficult to see. So IKEA, we're familiar with the furniture store, right? IKEA. Publicly facing, they say to create a better everyday life for many people. United Health Group, they say helping people live healthier lives and helping make the healthcare system work better for everyone. UNC Charlotte. UNC Charlotte maintains a particular commitment to addressing the culture, et cetera, right? So these are things that you will find on the website, or you might find in brochures, marketing materials. This is what tells you at first glance, here's what the company stands for. So this will help you navigate as you go into your careers. Next slide. Okay. So another component to company culture is interviews and conversations. And this is where you really get a better vibe for what is going on with an organization. So, as you're going into the job market, typical thing is you'll have an interview. So that might be with someone in the department, or it might be a human resource person, whoever's doing the recruiting, who you'll talk to. And what I want you to do is look beyond the basic questions, right? So don't fall into the basic question trap. Start having your assessment. So after you learn about the position that you're looking into, things to understand that you would want to understand better is, what is a day-to-day like? And maybe that recruiter doesn't have that answer, but they can find it out, or they may connect you with someone within the department that can explain better. And this is something that I practice when I have conversations with people and I realize, okay, this is something that I might be interested in. Then I start asking questions of things that would relate to me, because again, you have your values and your beliefs, and it's important to understand those because, again, you spend a lot of your time at work. So like some of the things I ask, I'm like, well, what's a typical day today? What do my hours look like? Um, do, do the team members typically take lunch breaks? Do we have outings? What do people do outside of work? Because sometimes there are people who like to work around the clock, and that's also okay. It's just what fits your personality. You want that to mesh up with the company that you are interviewing for, and this is a part of the conversations. Some people may find this difficult, and sometimes when I'm having conversations with recruiters, they get uncomfortable, but it's okay, right? Because you have to fill out what will work for you. And it's a give and take relationship. So the same way that they're trying to figure out, are you a good fit for my company? You're trying to figure out, are you a good fit for me? So I do want you all to think about that as you're having your conversations. Once you get past the basics, it's okay to start asking questions that will give you better insight into what your day would be like. Next slide. Okay, so now leadership, right? So there are different tiers to leadership. You have your corporate executives, which is typically your C-suite. You have your senior management. So if you're in a hierarchical organization, this chain of command may apply more to what you see, especially depending on the size of the organization. So senior management, that's like your directors, your vice presidents, your presidents, things such as that. And then you have your general management and colleagues, right? So this is your direct manager, the people that you work with on the team, maybe some cross-team functions, right? So this is the array of leadership that I was explaining at the beginning of the presentation. Next slide. So I come back to this quote, right? Because I think it's important. And again, I want to remind you all that, it's okay if you feel like a conversation is uncomfortable or difficult. It's a common thing, and no one wants to be uncomfortable. So I want to put this back in here just as a reminder as we continue through the presentation of, what the current status may be. Next slide. All right. So here are the conversations, right? So I mentioned earlier, there might be ideal conversations and there might be non-ideal conversations. But what are we really talking about here? So, workplace, typical conversations might be compensation. I want to talk about how much I'm getting paid, or how much I want to get paid, or how much I feel like I should get paid, my bonuses, things like that, right? Performance. This is a typical conversation that you'll have with someone, your manager, most likely, where you're talking about, okay, here's how well I did, here's where I want to go. Your workload, do I have a good workload? Or am I being overworked? Do I have a fair workload? Skills, policies, expectations. Those are the typical conversations, and sometimes those can be difficult. But there are also other components that they happen to us. It's reality, and it's the unspoken stuff that people may be uncomfortable speaking about. But if it's something that impacts you, bring it up, right? So this might mean sick leave, so depending on the company, some companies allow you to have sick leave. And if you know that you may want to take off for like people's funerals, or maybe you have a condition or something that's going on with you, that's something that you would want to look at in the company. That's also something, a conversation that you may want to broach with your manager, and you should feel comfortable expressing your needs to whoever you're having conversations with in the workplace. Some other things that impact us that kind of go under the microscope is discrimination. So discrimination is a real thing. It's an uncomfortable thing, but it's a real thing. And these are components of conversations that you will have in the workplace. And while it may be uncomfortable to you or to the person that you're speaking to, you may experience discrimination, and it's okay to bring that up. The language that people use, so tone is important. You might have an interest in different trainings. Again, family expansion, so adoption, like these are all parts of policies that it exists. Many companies have this as a part of the policies, but do people feel comfortable talking about it? I don't know. Many times not. Resignation, work-life balance, unconscious bias, microaggressions, right? So these are details that may be difficult to speak about, but it's a part of you. It's a part of your work world. It's a part of everyday life. So don't be hesitant to have such conversations. Next slide. So some tips, right? What do? You may be experiencing, or you may want to have a conversation on one of the topics that was just in the last slide. What do you do about it? Well, the first thing I would say is to acknowledge your feelings and perceptions, especially if it's a very, very uncomfortable topic or one that you can't pinpoint, right? Because everything's not black and white. Everything's not concrete. There may be something that's said that you can't necessarily prove, but you know how it made you feel. And so, when you're thinking about, I need to have this conversation and it might be difficult to have, first thing you need to do is acknowledge your feelings and your perceptions. Whether you have someone in your corner or whether you feel like everyone's against you, at the end of the day, you know how you are feeling. So it's important. Acknowledge it, say it. And then the next thing is to be responsive and not reactive. And I say be responsive because, depending on how you're feeling, whether it's good or bad, take a step back and pause for a second. Think about what's going on. Think about what you're experiencing. And then start developing a plan. Because if you react, you might say or do something that you don't agree with if you had a cooler head, right? So that's why I say be responsive and not reactive. And like, again, this is two negative and positive things. So like, even if you got a promotion, for instance, it's a promotion that you wanted and you're excited, you're like, yeah, I'm going to put in overtime, I'm going to do this, like, don't make commitments. don't react, just based on your emotion, whether it's good or bad. So, something occurs and you're acknowledging your feelings, take a step back and, think about it so that you can respond. The next thing, after you've thought it through, schedule and prepare for your conversation. So that's the first step. Don't keep it bottled in, whether it's good or bad. Don't keep it bottled in. Schedule a conversation. Tell the person, I need to talk with you, and prepare for that conversation. So in that preparation, that might be you outlining, okay, here's what I experienced, and here's what I think about it. Or here's what I experienced, and here's why we need to talk about it. The fourth thing is to be both pessimistic and optimistic. You might hear a lot for people to tell you to be optimistic. I tell you to do both, right? Because you can't control how a person responds to what you're bringing to them, especially if it's a topic that's making them uncomfortable, right? So I say prepare for the good and prepare for the bad. Prepare for what you anticipate the response to be. Prepare for what you, worst case scenario, right? It's like, oh, I hope they don't say that, or I hope they do this, So just prepare for all angles. Really think it through, right? Because these are conversations that may make people uncomfortable, or it may be a conversation that you're uncomfortable with. Whatever the case may be, you need to be prepared on all through the spectrum. Okay. So next slide. All right, so we're reaching the end of our presentation. I do want to give time for Q&A. So I wanted to give you all one more activity based on the topics that we discussed today. So this is where we're going to go into breakout rooms, and Jill's going to hop back on in a second. But what I would like you to do is think about two things that you would like to discuss with your manager. If you're not in the field yet, then think about two things that you would anticipate discussing with your manager. And this can be based on your values and your beliefs. This can be based on company culture. This can be based on something you're currently experiencing or something that you experienced in the past. And I want us to use maybe about 5 minutes just to have a discussion, and that's where we'll have our breakout rooms. I'll be in one of them. I think Jill will be in another, and then we'll reconvene to do a Q&A.